Is GameStop worth more than MetaMask and OpenSea combined? Now, GameStop is really interesting because GameStop's been in the news nonstop. They've restructured a ton of stuff. Their stores have restructured the way they function. Primarily, if you go into a GameStop now, yes, they have video games, but they kind of moved into more of like a novelty store surrounding video game culture, which is like one of the big changes they made. And in addition to that, you know, this all came from basically the amount of money they were able to secure thanks to what was the equivalent of being a meme stock for a while in a short squeeze. And we've covered, of course, short squeezes and what they are previously. So I won't go into detail there, but obviously that was big news. I think everybody's aware of GameStonks and Wall Street Bets, subreddit, etc. And then GameStop decides to get into cryptocurrency, specifically into NFTs. And that is where we end up talking about, you know, what their valuation is going to be. And there's really two parts to this, because what you end up having, like I said earlier, that we're going to, and this is kind of a foreshadowing, is that we are also going to be seeing a lot more ease of access utilizing Immutable X. And that's important because, well, that is what GameStop will be using. Let's get into this. Aristotle believed that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. If we apply the same logic to GameStop's future valuation, the company is worth well north of 20 billion US dollars and might even be worth as much as 30 billion US dollars. However, the reality is much more nuanced. Before the meme stock mania of 2021, GameStop was traversing a terminal decline trajectory, with foot traffic plummeting and the last vestiges of resistance among hardcore gamers to online downloads eliminated by the pandemic and the attendant social distancing realities. However, the video game retailer's newfound popularity among retail investors allowed it to raise a sizable repository of cash, which it is now enthusiastically plowing into its Web3 initiatives. I don't know about y'all, but I don't really count NFTs as Web3. I consider Web3 as a completely separate thing for the most part from NFTs. I realize that there's integration between the two, but my goal with Web3 would be actually being able to host and that sort of thing on the blockchain, more like what you see with like what Flux is doing, where you have basically a VPS type service, than what I would necessarily think of when I think of like an NFT marketplace and that sort of thing. That's me. So like Web3 is a very confusing term. But as a refresher, GameStop is about to officially launch a dedicated NFT marketplace that is built on Loopring's technology and harnesses the ability of Immutable X, an Ethereum Layer 2 solution to allow for minting and trading of NFTs in a carbon neutral and zero fee environment. In order to attract NFT creators, GameStop has created a $100 million fund that is denominated in Immutable X's IMX tokens. Eventually, GameStop aims to host billions of low-cost in-game digital assets and NFTs, including digital real estate and in-game skins, thereby creating a sizable new source of for revenue generation. And this is interesting because GameStop's getting into it, right? And this is like what people consider the metaverse, right? But they're getting in on the ground floor, starting out with the NFTs. I would like to point out that by and large, almost every other video game company, including Microsoft, Steam, Epic, you go down the list, they are anti-NFTs, anti-crypto. This really puts GameStop in a position where they haven't been in probably decades, right? Which is they become a first mover again. So they're kind of taking a bet on the first mover within to metaverse as I see it, right? And that's really important here because that could just blow this out of the water for them. Additionally, GameStop has also launched a browser extension-based digital wallet that would allow users to send, receive, and store cryptocurrencies, ERC20 tokens and Ethereum, as well as NFTs conveniently. Moreover, in what might well be the wallet's star attraction, users can swap different tokens directly within GameStop's digital wallet without the need to offload funds to an exchange. I mean, you can do that in MetaMask, right? And you can do that in 1inch, and you can do that in, there's a lot of other services that allow that, but what they get is that name recognition, and they get to start tying that game portion to the NFT market. And that's really where I think it's important, not so much what you can do with it, because that is already available. So for the uninitiated, MetaMask is one of the most popular crypto wallets currently on the market with 30 million monthly active users. Consensus, the company behind MetaMask wallet, was last valued at $7 billion back in March of 2022. On the other hand, OpenSea is the most popular NFT marketplace in the world and was valued at over $13 billion back in January of 2022. Given that GameStop is trying to capture the raison, there we go. I actually don't know this term. Raison d'etre? What does that mean? Reason or justification for existence. There you go. Okay, cool. Learning something new every day. All right. Of both MetaMask and OpenSea, it is hardly a surprise that some investors believe that the video game retailer's market capitalization should now take into account the valuation accorded to MetaMask and OpenSea. However, there are a few lacunas in the line of thinking. First, in light of the ongoing carnage in the wider crypto sphere, both MetaMask and OpenSea would be accorded a much lower valuation if a new funding round takes place today. Second, GameStop's Web3 push is still a bit fuzzy on the edges. For instance, the company has already announced that it eventually seeks to enter a partnership with around a dozen other crypto-focused enterprises. However, apart from Immutable X and Loopring, virtually nothing is known about the rest of the prospective partners. Critically, the success of GameStop's NFT marketplace initiative ultimately boils down to the outcome of its negotiations with major game publishers. And yes, I agree, this is where it really comes in. The same entities who have been on the receiving end of GameStop's used game resale business. Given the uncertainties involved, it is not surprising that the market remains reluctant to incorporate an upside to GameStop's market capitalization at this stage. Why did they bring that up, right? Because GameStop's business model was selling used video games, and that basically hurt the bottom line for a lot of video game developers, because what happened is like you would go and you would purchase a game, then you'd sell it back to GameStop, and then they'd sell that to somebody else, and none of the revenue would go to the developers. So what they're essentially saying is that they don't have a good relationship with developers. And that's important because if we're talking about NFTs and moving into Web3, well, what are we really looking at? Well, we're really looking at that whole entire metaverse idea, and that will inevitably need to have essentially known figures, already established figures that people are interested in, IPs, right? So you're going to want to have your Halos, you're going to want to have your Master Chief, you're going to want to have your Nathan Drake from Uncharted, you're going to want to have your Lara Croft from Tomb Raider, you're going to want to have all of these iconic video game characters, name your favorite one, all in the same metaverse. That's really ultimately the goal, right? Just not dissimilar from that book and movie. What was it again? The virtual reality one. Why am I blanking on it? I just watched it recently. Maybe you guys can help me there. But the idea, like, it's a lot less cool if you don't have all of these iconic figures, right? Like all of the pop culture icons within that metaverse. If you don't have them, then you don't really want it. And I think initially with Metaverse, what you will see is you will see like Metaverse A getting, Super Mario and and all the Nintendo characters, right? And you'll see Metaverse B get all of the, Sony PlayStation characters, right? And that will basically split communities. Whereas the real goal is to have all of it in one place, Master Chief fighting Nathan Drake. That's what at the end of the day, that's the vision for your virtual reality world, right? Ready Player One. Yes, thank you. That is it. So really the ultimate, like if I look at a metaverse, right? First of all, I don't want web browser because I want to be able to utilize my full and maybe web browser gaming gets to the point to where it can utilize my full PC, but I want, good high frame rate, high quality graphics with the characters that I am interested in playing in that metaverse. That's what I want. I want a Ready Player One universe to participate in. I don't want some knockoff weird BS like universe that doesn't have any of that. And that's going to be a problem once again, like we were talking about with GameStop in particular, because the very industry that they're going to monetize with this, NFT kind of push is the actual market that they have proverbially been, f***ing over for quite some time. So it makes it very difficult for them to get those deals and partnerships. I mean, if you look at it, right, like there was even stuff in the movie for Ready Player One that they couldn't put in from the book because they just didn't have the licenses for it. And Ready Player One was already also one of the highest costing movies from a licensing perspective as it sits. Maybe though, I mean, in reality, right, like NFTs do solve that problem to a certain extent because you can put those royalty fees into the actual smart contract, into the NFT. So that's where I would approach it from, right? I'd be like, look, this NFT, it comes from there. We can put it into any universe. You will always get that cut as a publisher or as a developer or whatever. You will always get that cut. And that NFT will track it across all of the metaverses. That's the ultimate goal, right? And it doesn't have to be within GameStop's marketplace specifically. And I think that's really where it ends up, what it really ends up boiling down to. How long does it take to get there is really the question, right? Of course, the ongoing macroeconomic environment, punctuated by a Federal Reserve bent on hiking interest rates to curb an out-of-control inflationary impulse and a rapidly slowing down U.S. economy, is not conducive for speculative plays. It is for this reason that growth-focused equities have been pummeled viciously over the past few months. The combined valuation of MetaMask and OpenSea roughly computes at $20 billion, based on the funding rounds that took place before the current crypto carnage accelerated. In today's environment, these enterprises would easily be worth around half of their previously lofty valuation. Let's be ultra conservative and assume that the two businesses combined are worth just $5 billion today. This means that GameStop's market capitalization should increase by at least $5 billion and compute at $13.94 billion, thereby corresponding to a stock price of $183 and entailing a gain of 56% relative to the company's current stock price. Do not take this as financial advice, guys. This is terrible. Of course, complicating this system or this simple analysis is the still fuzzy nature of GameStop's Web3 related ambitions, which continues to demand a hefty discount. Do not take that as financial advice and do not go out purchasing GameStonk. Thanks for checking out this clip from the Crypto Mining Show. You can check out the full episode here or more crypto content down here. Also, I'd like you to check out my locals page at sonofatech.locals.com, where you can become a member for free or choose to be a $5 a month supporter that unlocks additional content.